People with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once, also didn't get all of my vaccines, and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows and listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon, and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remembered being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I moved 1,000 kilometers to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like minus 30 degrees Celsius, and I'd have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat there for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills, being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing, to be honest. It was awful. I burnt my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me too: "God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to hell and I go to heaven because God takes good care of mothers." I am not exaggerating. This actually happened. Pretty sure I've said this before, at least in so many words, and I'll say it again. Fanaticism in anything is only going to lead you down a dark and horrible path that will surely lead to people absolutely hating you. And if they don't, it's probably because they're just as indoctrinated as you. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining about how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally, there was even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason of my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing other religions were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college, and my mom constantly worries that I'm going to convert. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents, so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion, I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them. Women weren't equal, and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only, or church-related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals, encourages friendships with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts and dresses, don't cut their hair, keep their hair in a tight, modest bun for church, or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside of the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like, youth groups was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I'm an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. For me, it was only my mom who was religious, Jehovah's Witness. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating, and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing and threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their love life was depressing too because lovemaking was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together, but I know they're struggling like they did when I was 5. When I was a kid, my best friend in the entire world actually was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't really understand it by any means, but they weren't that bad or anything. Like, they were pretty normal. They just went to church and stuff and didn't do Christmas and stuff like that. I remember their family being a little dysfunctional, but so was mine, and that didn't really matter to me because, like I said, we were just best friends. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time, Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids, but the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up, I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and wasting my life away. When I first heard the word SX around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Hell, in every school I went to, my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the SparkNotes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young, I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishments. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. I later found out that the reason my father lashed out at me and called me these names was because he was fighting his own battles on these issues. He watched smut and hated himself for it. He lost his job. Not his fault. 2008 was hard for everyone. 2020 is no better. And felt inadequate. He was directing his own self-hatred at me. Now, both of us hate ourselves, and digging our way out seems impossible. From my mother's side, things were smooth. However, my father was using religion to abuse me. As a Muslim, we used to memorize the Quran. For me, I wasn't good at memorizing, so I spent 12 years, 3 hours a day trying. After all, I stopped trying and he kept shaming me for not completing it. During the 12 years, he was always comparing me with other kids, friends and cousins, which made me hate them as well. He would also use religion to abuse my mother, face covers and gloves and other crap. Not only that, he listens to music whenever he wants, but when he sees us listening to it, he starts yelling and shaming us. Extremists consider music as taboo. Life was hard for me when I'm close to him, so I moved away. I wouldn't call them extremists, but Pokemon, Harry Potter, MTG, and a lot of other stuff was banned. Pokemon because it promoted evolution over creationism, other stuff because of magic and demonic imagery, the list goes on. I missed out on a lot of cool stuff growing up. Then both my uncles came out as gay, and the whole religious bullcrap stopped soon after. Parents and I get along fine now, but I'm still kind of salty about some stuff. They confiscated my entire secret stash of MTG cards when they found them. I'm super atheist now, by the way. How insecure do you have to be with your ideology and just way of life if you feel like, I don't know, Pikachu could flush years of indoctrination down the toilet because your child plays Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or some crap? It's just so stupid. Same for religions that ban music. It's just pathetic at a certain point. My parents are still Muslim and I am still not an adult, so I am still in the process of having to live with them. You would guess that my father would be a little more open to the world after seeing his half-brother being happily married to a man. No, exactly the opposite. You are not allowed to be like him. He is going to the bad place. He is tainting the family's reputation. That is point 1, forcing their child to be someone that they simply aren't. They want to force me and my brother to go back to Turkey. I do not want that at all. I was born and raised and I have lived in Germany for my whole life. Turkey is also really anti-LGBTQ+, something that would really endanger me. Having parents that think that mental illness in general do not exist and are results of demons entering the body to torment your soul is not a great thing. I am pretty sure that I have anxiety, depression, and maybe something more that I am not comfortable with sharing, but guess what? There is no such thing as anxiety or depression. You simply do not wish to follow my guidance. And they send me to the mosque to learn and read our Quran and to chase the demons away. I need a therapist since I was maybe 6 years old, but nobody listens. I am feeling like they are trying to take my identity away. I am someone who isn't comfortable with their body at all. I don't mean weight, I mean the gender they assigned me at birth. But I know that I will never get the chance to live as who I am. Even my friends do not accept my wishes and still use the wrong pronouns and name. Guess I'll never get the chance to choose who I want to be and who I want to love. Like seriously, they picked who they want to marry themselves, but when I asked if I can choose my husband, I get a no? I am someone who would gladly cut them out from my life, but sadly I know what would happen. They would try more things to get me to stay, or would never leave me alone. My family thought my dad was murdered in Ecuador on a mission trip and that it was my fault. He was on a mission trip and would call us daily from the phone in town about a mile walk from where he stayed. We didn't get a call for 2 days and then got a voicemail from a hospital in Ecuador that was in Spanish and had bad reception. Around this time, I snuck a copy of Diablo home from a friend's house to install on my computer against my mother's commands. She was very religious and warned me about the evils of bringing sinful things into our home. Always said that doing so would invite devils into our home and our lives. Long story short, I lived in complete agony and regret for a week thinking I murdered my father, just to get a call from him when he landed in Texas saying they lost power to phones in town and he wasn't able to call home. This is just one of the many times I was messed up over our religious upbringing. My parents were pretty cool when it came to religion and raising me and my sister growing up. They were both Christians and I was taught all the stories and such, but we weren't churchgoers. It was exposure to my aunt and uncle and their family that really gave me a taste of religious fundamentalism. I moved from a heavily Catholic, though my immediate family weren't Catholic, small Texas town to Middle Tennessee where I turned 10. Not only did I really get my first taste of religious fundamentalism moving into the Bible Belt, but particularly the hardcore Baptist sect of it, the largest being the aforementioned aunt and uncle. Our families got along, but they would always pressure us into going to church with them, make buttholish comments about our parents raising us for hell and that we turn out to be bums and women of the night. Over the course of 13 years of living in Tennessee, I moved back to Texas a decade ago. Our families had more than one falling out. I'm grateful that I didn't live directly under the thumb of it, but between them and the overabundance of fundamentalism in rural Tennessee really turned me off religion entirely, and is a large reason of why I am so proud to be an atheist today. So congratulations to said aunt and uncle, you failed spectacularly. I was raised Mormon and I happen to also be gay. My father is nothing short of devout, very, very religious. I ended up feeling alone most of my teenage years, and at the time thought I would disappoint my parents so strongly I thought I would never survive the stress. So there's a lot of pressure to feel the spirit even at a young age. But there's a lot more age-based ceremonies, so you get a lot of attention specifically on yourself at a young age. 8. Baptism. My parents also gave me Mumi, First Bible/Book of Mormon. 12. Become a deacon, passing sacrament. 14. Become a teacher, preparing sacrament. 16. Becoming a priest, blessing sacrament. 18. Gaining the priesthood, the right to most of the authority and capabilities in the church. 19. Going on a mission. Anyway, I never felt anything, and once I started having gay urges, I freaked and repressed those emotions deep down. By the time I was 16, my faith was faltering, as so many of the teachings made no sense to me. I stopped going to the church, never got the priesthood, never went on mission, and my parents kept saying, it's just a phase. At 25, after another failed female relationship, she was incredible, I just had zero attraction to her. I finally came to terms with being gay. I had no idea how I would ever find the courage to tell them. I was so afraid they would shut me out and I would lose them forever, especially my dad. Despite his strong religious background, he was always a very loving father. I love his company. When I was 27, I told my parents I actually had a boyfriend for a year and it was going well. My mom basically started becoming hysterical. My father, stone silent. My mom spouting facts about HIV. My dad's look of confusion and controlled poise was unnerving. It was a bumpy next couple of years for both of them, but my mom came around sooner. My dad took forever. I reminded myself it took me 13 years since puberty to accept this. I can give them time too. He started coming around since I got in a new relationship with my partner. My current partner of 4 years is incredible. He melts the stone hearts of both my parents. He's kind, anticipates the needs of everyone around him, and a joy to be around. My parents see how happy he makes me. My mom asked me recently, when are we getting married? My father hugs my partner with genuine love and appreciation. Being raised religious was very stressful. I felt alone for a long period in my life. Now I am living what I thought was not achievable. I opened up to my parents. They accept me for who I am. I accept them, and we're all happier than I ever could have hoped for. Sometimes you really need a story like this one just to lighten the mood a little bit, because I'm actually really happy for this dude. Was deathly terrified of who I was. I'm bi. My dad literally told me he would disown us if he found out we were gay. The funny thing is, we ended up disowning him. He was doing illegal substances behind our backs, and now he can't see his grandkids. Grew up with heavily religious parents, but my mom was way more immersed within it than the rest of my family. Christian. She wasn't as strict with me compared to my other siblings, but she basically forced the idea of church on all of us, and kinda drilled it into our head that participating in worldly events will send you to hell. Sex before marriage? Hell. LGBTQ plus friends? Hell. Self-deletion? Hell. You get the gist of it. I felt guilty for feeling and thinking a lot of things I considered to be bad and would try to make up for it by praying. She was also the primary source for my horrid self-image issues. I was pretty overweight as a kid, and my mom has always been overweight, so hearing things like, you don't need to be eating that extra cookie, or you're way too big, or I definitely need to get you a trainer so you can be skinny like your friends, definitely crushed me on the inside. I did end up losing a lot of weight and evened out, so she never really comments on my body anymore. The whole deliverance plus tongues thing was scary to me as a child, and I never fully understood it. I tried so hard to feel the presence of God within me, but I never understood what everyone else was talking about. I never talked to God, and eventually I started questioning things when I was around 12 to 13. Anyways, fast forward to when I was around 15, I had realized how crappy organized religion was, and how inauthentic and hypocritical everyone is. I told my mom that I don't believe in God, and she pulled the, but God provided everything for you, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., etc. Like, no. I'm pretty sure you working your butt off day in and day out did that. A lot of times she also likes to go on the whole, if you don't follow in God's path, you'll just be a vehement sinner who will go to hell spiel. It's tiring and repetitive. She's still a Jesus freak, and I still don't agree with the church whatsoever, but most of the time I just go so she won't moan at me or threaten to take my car keys away, or some absurd thing like that. Nowadays, though, I have no interest in being part of the church or religion whatsoever, but every Sunday morning we go, I always have a toke session beforehand, LOL. I remember crying myself to sleep some nights because my friends celebrated Christmas, so I thought that meant they couldn't get into heaven. That is like really, really sad. Like the thought of every year that comes around, everyone's like excited for Christmas, and then this one kid is just like so upset that his friends aren't going to go to heaven with him. That's really sad. I lack sentiment in any form, and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head, and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies, and I'm learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's frickin' hard. I'm gonna try and find one that isn't so sad. 1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat, and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-vegetarian on Sunday, Friday, and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. Yes, I'm Hindu. Yes, it does doesn't sound so extreme, but I want to be a chef, so it does sound extreme from my point of view. No, I'm not going to get the hell out of this place because I still love my parents. My mother and father work very hard to ensure I get a proper education and food. Okay, maybe a little oppressive in some regards, but not that bad, not that bad. I honestly think that's the best tone we're gonna end on. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.